This episode is brought to you by Discover. It's smart to always have a few financial goals. And here's a really smart one you can set: earning cash back on what you buy every day. With Discover, you can. Get this. Discover automatically matches all the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year. Seriously, all of it. Discover trusts you to make smart decisions. After all, you listen to this podcast. See terms at discover.com/creditcard.
Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
So I have a number for you. Since Donald Trump took office, courts have ruled against him more than 70 times. This is according to Reuters. They've added up judicial orders that question the administration's approach to immigration, to government spending, to transgender military members. And you know what? I think Donald Trump is beginning to notice.
I want to talk about one
Wait a
man.
minute.
Yep.
We have to be treated fairly by judges, and we're not being treated fairly by all judges.
In interviews commemorating his 100th day in office, President Trump kept circling back to this point, that the courts, judges, are holding him back. In one conversation, he nodded along when the interviewer suggested his losses amounted to a judicial insurrection. You know, I noticed the New York Times describing the courts as the last bulwark against Trump. Politico called this the court case presidency. Do judges like that kind of attention?
Absolutely not.
Huh.
I really think it's important not to politicize this any more than you inevitably have to.
Jeremy Fogel was a federal judge for 2 decades. If you talk to him for a few minutes, you get the sense that judges feel like they've been drafted to fight in a kind of war. He still speaks with his old colleagues on the bench. He says right now, a lot of them are worried, feeling pressure. Some have even gotten direct threats.
You know, it's just different. It's never happened before. And I, in addition to my federal service, I was a state court judge for 17 years. So I go back to the early 1980s, and I don't remember anything like this.
The Trump administration has been losing in court a lot. There was one day where the administration had 3 losses in court inside of 90 minutes.
That's right. I think this is going to be a very significant year. And I want to say that this is not a liberal conservative issue, that some of the most outspoken and some of the most articulate defenders of the rule of law in this period have been conservative judges. I think, my favorite, my personal favorite of all the rulings I've read recently was Judge Wilkinson's decision in the Abrego Garcia case. And he's a very conservative person and a very conservative judge.
Wilkinson's opinion, rejecting a Trump administration request, it was succinct. It's difficult in some cases to get to the heart of the matter, Wilkinson wrote. But in this case, it is not hard at all. The government is asserting a right to stash away residents of this country in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process that is the foundation of our constitutional order.
He just called this out, I think, in quite an eloquent way.
But I feel like I can sense this gearing up, like in conservative media and in the executive branch itself. You know, like Glenn Beck did an interview with Trump in the White House where they talked about judges and the idea of impeaching judges. Beck later started talking about a judicial coup taking place and the judiciary as a secret resistance. It really feels like this thing that's snowballing right now.
Well, I think there are a lot of people who want very much to politicize this. And it may be that this is sincerely how they see what's going on.
Do you think it's dangerous to do that?
I think so.
Today on the show, the growing conflict between Donald Trump and the courts. How long will rulings on paper keep the president's ambition in check? I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. Today's episode is sponsored by NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast. Life comes with big money questions like, are target date funds a smart or lazy way to invest? Should you pay off debt or invest extra cash? Can you deduct your dog as a home security system on your taxes? NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast has the answers. Their finance journalists break down investing strategies, tax planning, and smart ways to build wealth and navigate big financial decisions. Work smarter, not harder, on your finances this year. Follow NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast wherever you listen. And stay tuned till the end of this episode to hear the Smart Money trailer. Today's episode is sponsored by NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast. Life comes with big money questions like, are target date funds a smart or lazy way to invest? Should you pay off debt or invest extra cash? Can you deduct your dog as a home security system on your taxes? NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast has the answers. Their finance journalists break down investing strategies, tax planning, and smart ways to build wealth and navigate big financial decisions. Work smarter, not harder, on your finances this year. Follow NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast wherever you listen. And stay tuned till the end of this episode to hear the Smart Money trailer. I want to talk about a few different cases where we can see the tension that's generating between the judicial branch and the Trump administration. Can we talk maybe first of all about the arrest of Milwaukee County Judge Hannah Dugan back in April? I'll just lay out the plot of what happened. I think my listeners will be familiar with some of it. FBI officials accuse her of helping an undocumented immigrant evade arrest in her Milwaukee courtroom, a 30-year-old Mexican immigrant who was accused of battery and was there to deal with that case. And my understanding is he was in her chambers. She directed him to a side door. He didn't actually evade being apprehended at all, but just that action, telling him about a different door to go out, seemed to be enough for this judge to be arrested. So how did you hear about this case and what did you think of it when you did?
Well, I heard about it on the news, probably like most of your listeners did. And I had two reactions, and they really are on two completely different levels. There's the political level of it, and then there is the legal level as to whether Judge Dugan did anything illegal. Is what she did something that she was privileged to do in her judicial position or not? And it's going to depend on, I think, what the status of the hearing was and whether what the agents did was disruptive and what her intentions were. This is all stuff that'll get sorted out if the case is prosecuted. But in terms of the political way that the case has been used, the fact that this particular venue was targeted in the first place, and certainly the way that the case was highlighted by the administration, that's a political process. And I do think that's part of a overall pattern of trying to diminish public confidence in the judiciary. I think that's, I don't say that lightly. I think that's when you add that to the threats to impeach judges, the characterization of judges as being dangerous left-wing lunatics or things like that, that really doesn't create an environment where you're encouraging respect for the third branch of government. And I think that's what judges are concerned about. It's the attempt to delegitimize what they do.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the impeachment calls, because we've seen Donald Trump and Elon Musk, others call for federal judges who rule against the administration to be impeached. Can judges be impeached for their decisions? I mean, I guess anything can happen, but
can they be, or should they be, or have they been? You know, the Constitution, when it talks about impeachment, talks about high crimes and misdemeanors. There has been one judge in the entire history of the United States, and it was actually a Supreme Court justice named Samuel Chase, who was impeached, not convicted. He was impeached by Congress in 1806. He was a Federalist, and the Congress at that time had a supermajority of Jeffersonians, and they didn't like his decisions, and so they impeached him. And then he had a trial in the Senate, And I think half a dozen of the Jeffersonian senators said, we don't want to set this precedent of removing judges simply because we disagree with their decisions. And that was really all that Justice Chase had done. So they didn't convict him. And that is the only time in our history that a sitting Article III judge has been impeached by Congress, and he was not convicted.
This history is important because it runs so contrary to what's happening right now. Take, for instance, how President Trump is talking about judges. Back in March, the president said U.S. District Judge James Boasberg should be impeached after the judge halted the use of the Alien Enemies Act to deport migrants to Venezuela. That triggered Chief Justice John Roberts to chime in with a rare public statement of his own, saying impeachment is not an appropriate response to a disagreement concerning a judicial decision.
And I think the chief had to speak up. He did, and I think it was very much appreciated by the rank and file of the judiciary. And again, this is bipartisan. This is Republican judges, Democratic judges.
Did it surprise you when the Chief Justice weighed in there?
No, it did not surprise me. I felt it was appropriate. I applauded him for doing it. I think it was the right thing to do.
But he's not exactly a social justice warrior.
No, that's my point. I mean, I think this is about the independence of the judiciary. And I think it's part of what the chief said is that we don't impeach judges in our country because we don't like their decisions. We impeach judges if they commit crimes. It's not because you don't like how they decided a case. And then some of it actually gets really kind of comical if you know the people involved. I mean, Judge Bates, John Bates, who also sits in D.C., he was characterized as a left-wing LGBTQ activist, which if you know Judge Bates, I mean, it is so laughable.
What did he rule on?
He made a temporary ruling. He granted a temporary restraining order in one of the cases involving firing federal workers. And there are some other cases he's had where he ruled in favor of the administration. So the point is it's fact-free.
Yeah, I mean, I noted that it was a Trump-appointed judge this past weekend who got very exercised over the fact that citizen children seem to have been sent out of the country without their co-parent being informed, just some little note from the mother saying, yes, I'm taking the children out of the country because I'm being deported. And that was a judge, in my recollection, who's very, very conservative, but said, hold it.
I really hope, Mary, I mean, this is the point I'm trying to make, is that it is so tempting to characterize this as a liberal versus conservative issue. This is a Democrat versus Trump issue. And I think that it's just a huge mistake. I think it really cheapens the nature of the debate. That's not what it's about. It's about having a judiciary that decides cases based on the law, based on the evidence, after giving people an opportunity to be heard by judges who are trained in the law and faithful to the law. And it doesn't mean they get it right all the time. It doesn't mean they don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean you don't get to criticize the rulings that judges make if you don't like them. But to kind of turn it into this evidence-free thing, well, they're all radical left-wing crazies because they don't agree with what the president's trying to do. That is so corrosive.
I can't help but notice that the Trump administration's war on the judiciary, if you want to call it that, its beef with the judiciary, it really seems focused on immigration. And I say that because so many of the places where it seems like the administration gets very exercised are about immigration cases. When the president did one interview, he basically said, the voters elected me to deport a ton of people. And if you're a judge getting in my way, you're getting in the way of my mandate, basically. This is my job, and this is part of the problem here. This is why this is an issue. Is it notable to you that it really seems like immigration is the issue where, even though the administration is being ruled against in a lot of different ways on a lot of different topics?
Well, I would amend what you said slightly. I mean, obviously, what you said is true. I mean, it's true that immigration is a hot issue, and any case involving immigration is going to be one that is watched very carefully in the way that you described. But the cases against the universities, the cases against law firms, the Doge cases, the ones where there's efforts to fire thousands of federal workers. There have been judges who've ruled against the administration in those cases, and they've gotten the same treatment. So it is a more general sense that, hey, we're speaking with the voice of the people here, and you're getting in our way, just as you described, and we're going to come after you. And I think that's just, I mean, frankly, that's just not how it's not how our country works. And I think that's what the message that I think is starting to crystallize is we've had a pretty good run here for 250 years almost. And it's based on separation of powers, judicial independence, the respect that the branches have for each other. Doesn't mean that they don't fight with each other. They do. I mean, you have conflicts between the three branches, but for the executive branch to basically try to neuter the judicial branch, it's not who we are. It's not the way our country is constituted. It's not.
Well, frankly, it worked with Congress.
Well, but Congress is a political branch, whereas the whole reason that judges have life tenure is so that this doesn't happen. This was a debate that happened when the Constitution was framed. You go back to 1789, that there was a big debate about judicial review and judicial independence, and the idea that if you don't have judicial independence, if you don't protect judges from the political process, then everything's political. This is really kind of how our country is set up. And, sometimes people like it, sometimes people don't like it, but it's in our DNA. And so to try to tear that down in what appears to be a systematic way, I think that's what's concerning my former colleagues. They feel like there's a systematic attack.
When we come back, a case that lays out the way the administration thinks the judiciary is supposed to work. This episode is brought to you by Discover. It's smart to always have a few financial goals. And here's a really smart one you can set: earning cash back on what you buy every day. With Discover, you can. Get this. Discover automatically matches all the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year. Seriously, all of it. Discover trusts you to make smart decisions. After all, you listen to this podcast. See terms at discover.com/creditcard.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today? Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. And that's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you can save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states and situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Every day, thousands of Comcast engineers and technologists, like Kunle, put people at the heart of everything they create.
In the average household, there are dozens of connected devices. Here in the Comcast family, we're building an integrated in-home Wi-Fi solution for millions of families like my own. It brings people together in meaningful ways.
Kunle and his team are building a Wi-Fi experience that connects 1 billion devices every year. Learn more about how Comcast is redefining the future of connectivity at comcastcorporation.com/Wi-Fi.
I want to talk about one of the ways this attack on the judiciary is being systematized at this moment. Like, there's this case that's making its way through the federal courts brought by the America First Legal Foundation, which was founded by Trump advisor Stephen Miller. And I want to focus in on it because I think it gives clues about how the administration wants the judiciary to behave. It alleges that the Judicial Conference and the Administrative Office of the United States should be removed from the judicial branch and brought under the executive branch. This sounds really wonky. I think most of my listeners won't be familiar with these offices. Can you explain why this case is important?
Oh, sure. It's actually very important, and I'm going to outwonk you for a second here, and just say that no. So this is something that's actually quite interesting. And I worked in the same building as the administrative office, and until 1939, the administrative office of the courts was part of the Department of Justice.
What does it do?
Well, it is the administrative body that supports the federal judiciary. They run the rules committees. They run all the other committees that support judges. They hand out money. I mean,
So it's the engine room for the judicial branch.
Yeah, and then it's advised by a body called the Judicial Conference of the United States. So they make policy for the judiciary. And when I say policy, they don't tell judges how to decide cases, but they provide funding for the courts. They provide the rules of procedure for the courts. It's the governance. It's how the courts function from day to day is actually under the control of the Judicial Conference and the administrative office. And
so I could see how like cutting the budget to this office could actually trickle down really quickly to making the courts a little less functional.
Absolutely. And as I was saying, I mean, they were part of the Department of Justice until 1939. It was actually Chief Justice Taft, and you remember William Howard Taft, he was president for one term, kind of undistinguished president, but he later became the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. He's the only person in American history who held both offices. And he was actually a very consequential Chief Justice, and he was the guy who got the Supreme Court a separate building. And the Supreme Court used to be in the Capitol. And one of his parts of his legacy, although he had died by then, was that the administrative office was taken out of the Department of Justice, and it was separately created by an act of Congress. And the reason they did it was because of fears of conflict of interest, that you didn't want the same agency, that is the Department of Justice, the same agency that was deciding who to prosecute and what the government was going to go after in terms of legal policy. You didn't want those people also deciding what courts were going to get funded and what the rules of court were going to be.
Because it could let you stack the deck.
Exactly. It would allow you to stack the deck. And so it was 1939, finally, that the bill was enacted. And, so we're, not quite a century later, and we've been doing pretty darn well with it. It's a very robust form of management. And I've sat in those meetings. I went to, I think, 15 judicial conference meetings. And, they are very meticulous. They're very careful. They really are thinking about, well, what's the best way to run the branch? And one thing they do not think about is how do we stack the deck in favor of one party or another.
So this lawsuit that seeks to bring this group under the executive branch again, my understanding is that it's expected to fail.
Yes.
But why is it important anyway?
Well, because if you did bring it back, then I think it would be a major loss of independence.
I mean, some have pointed out, when comparing the United States to, say, other countries that have had authoritarian backslides, places like Hungary, they involved bringing the judiciary to heel. I could easily see how if this group was under the executive branch, it would be a way to bring the judiciary to heel.
Absolutely. And I think there's two reactions to that. One is that is exactly right. And I think that the judges I've spoken to about this are just uniformly horrified about it. But it's another reason why it's not going to happen, because you just think about it for a second, the people who are going to have to decide that case ultimately are judges.
They like being in power.
Yeah, I think there's like zero chance that there's going to be a judicial elimination of the AO and the Judicial Conference.
Can I ask you the big question, which is, what do you think is going to happen if and when this administration decides forthrightly to violate an order from the Supreme Court? I think you could argue they're already doing this.
Well,
or trying to, with the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case.
Yeah, well, we're not there yet, and I have to say, I'm cautious. I'm a cautious person, and so I'm not.
I know. You're more cautious than I am.
Yeah, I'm not gonna jump to conclusions here, but
and just to set it up, the Supreme Court has said you must facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the man you mistakenly sent to El Salvador. And we do have President Trump in the Oval Office saying, I could call and make the call and get this guy back now, but I won't. So that is where we are, but that's not in court.
Let me answer your question a little bit sideways, if I might. There was another immigration case involving people who were being detained in Texas. And there was a midnight order by the Supreme Court, literally a midnight order, saying you may not deport any of these people until we've had a chance to rule on the merits of the case. That was really significant in terms of your question.
Simply because it came out in the middle of the night?
Well, yeah. And not only did it came out in the middle of the night, but it also came out at a procedural point in the case where it normally would not have come out. And the case hadn't been fully briefed yet. The Fifth Circuit hadn't had a chance to weigh in on the emergency stay application that was made to the Fifth Circuit.
I think Justice Alito didn't have time to file his dissent.
Exactly. And yet 7 justices, Justice Alito and Justice Thomas didn't join, but 7 of the justices said, we are not going to wait because we're afraid, they didn't say this, but sort of the clear implication is if we wait, these folks might get deported before the other decisions can come in. And I think it was a real signal, hey, don't mess with us. I thought that was a very important decision, and it was important because of the context in which it occurred, and also that, you had, of the 6-3 conservative majority, 4 of them, the Chief Justice and Justice Barrett, Justice Gorsuch, and Justice Kavanaugh, they joined with the liberal justices in saying you cannot deport any of these people until the case has been fully heard and fully briefed. They did that in a midnight order. I mean, that's...
So you're saying that the Supreme Court is primed for misbehavior here. They're trying to anticipate it.
They're thinking about this stuff. I don't think you need to be concerned about that.
But they still have no enforcement mechanism here.
That's always been the question in the separation of powers. This was the famous quote from Andrew Jackson. Justice Marshall's made his order, now let him enforce it. It's like
J.D. Vance loves that quote.
Yeah, the court doesn't have an army. And so we may be heading toward that. Again, I'm cautious, and I'm also an optimist, so I'm not convinced we're headed for that. But I mean, there's certainly the potential for that.
I mean, some have pointed out, when comparing the United States to, say, Hungary, which did take this turn in a more authoritarian direction, in Hungary, the EU can at least exercise some leverage over the government.
Yes.
And in the U.S., there's less ability for that.
Yeah, we don't have the EU. We don't have the European Court of Justice, and we don't have those kinds of safeguards. And it really will take the public getting educated about this. And it's one of the reasons that I'm working myself to exhaustion doing shows like this, because I just think it's important to get the word out that regardless of what your political orientation is, you can be pro-Trump, you can be anti-immigration, you can be conservative in a whole host of areas. The threat to the rule of law is not something to be taken lightly. It's really important.
Judge Fogel, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm grateful for your time.
I'm very, very happy to be with you again. Thank you.
Jeremy Fogel is a former federal judge. He's now the executive director of the Berkeley Judicial Institute. And that's our show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, Ethan Oberman, Isabel Angell, and Madeline Ducharme. Ben Richmond is the senior director of podcast operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Go track me down on Blue Sky. Say, hey, I'm at Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. Catch you back here next time.
Today's episode is sponsored by NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast. Money can be confusing. Should you invest in ETFs, get a travel rewards credit card, buy a house, or just build a really fancy pillow fort?
That could work. No shame in pillow fort game. Or you could just tune in for clear, research-backed financial insights.
I'm Sean Piles, a certified financial planner professional.
And I'm Elizabeth Ayola. We're the hosts of NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast, where you bring the money questions and we bring trustworthy information backed by NerdWallet's expert analysis, without the jargon or the sales pitch.
Our nerds do the research so you don't have to. We'll help you understand your options so you can make the best decision for your situation, from optimizing your investments and maximizing credit card rewards to making big money moves with confidence.
Plus, we keep it real. No lectures, no judgment. Just tips and tools you can use to build wealth and take control of your finances. Think of us as your financial GPS, helping you navigate your money decisions and avoid expensive wrong turns.
Whether you're planning for retirement, weighing a big purchase, or just want to make your money work harder for you, we've got insights that you can use in real life.
So, if you want practical, straightforward, and actually useful financial knowledge, plus a little bit of fun along the way, follow NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast on your favorite podcast app.
Trust us, future you will thank you. Today's episode is sponsored by NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast. Money can be confusing. Should you invest in ETFs, get a travel rewards credit card, buy a house, or just build a really fancy pillow fort?
That could work. No shame in pillow fort game. Or you could just tune in for clear, research-backed financial insights.
I'm Sean Piles, a certified financial planner professional.
And I'm Elizabeth Ayola. We're the hosts of NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast, where you bring the money questions and we bring trustworthy information backed by NerdWallet's expert analysis, without the jargon or the sales pitch.
Our nerds do the research so you don't have to. We'll help you understand your options so you can make the best decision for your situation, from optimizing your investments and maximizing credit card rewards to making big money moves with confidence.
Plus, we keep it real. No lectures, no judgment. Just tips and tools you can use to build wealth and take control of your finances. Think of us as your financial GPS, helping you navigate your money decisions and avoid expensive wrong turns.
Whether you're planning for retirement, weighing a big purchase, or just want to make your money work harder for you, we've got insights that you can use in real life.
So, if you want practical, straightforward, and actually useful financial knowledge, plus a little bit of fun along the way, follow NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast on your favorite podcast app.
Trust us, future you will thank you.